Let me just use my own shirt as a white balance. Woo! Hello you guys, welcome back to my channel. It is so hot here and I think I'm dying. This bad boy is the sketchbook I used to apply for the Sheridan Illustration program 2020 and I got in. Whether you're trying to spruce up your sketchbook for portfolio applications for art school, or you're just out of ideas on what to draw, or you want to practice in your sketchbook more effectively to improve as an artist, this video is for you. If you just want the ideas on what to draw and you're not using it to apply to art school or for portfolios, skip to this timestamp. So hello the rest of you. Good luck on your applications, you're gonna do great. First, quick tip, if you have a deadline to hand in your portfolio by, whether it's for a class or for portfolio season, here's how I made sure that I would get mine done by the deadline. Actually, first page spread in, I set it up like this and I used it as a progress tracker. When you get your sketchbook, there should be a sticker or some kind of packaging on it that says how many pages are in it. So then you know in your head how many pages you need to complete by the deadline. Divide the amount of pages by how many days you have to complete your sketchbook until your deadline, and you have how many pages you should shoot for completing per day. And depending on how late you've pushed this off to, or how much of a honking sketchbook you chose, that number can be kind of daunting. But at least then, you'll have in your mind, if I only completed 3 pages today and I was supposed to shoot for 4, do an extra one tomorrow. And that is where this spread comes in handy. So I actually ended up using 2 different methods. One was just the tally method. I had all the days listed out and then I would make a tally for every page I completed that day just so I could keep track of where I was lacking. At some point I kind of fell out of using that, so I converted to a sort of bar graph format where every block or half block represented a page and then how many across was how many I was completing per day. Experiment, find something that works for you. I found that having this at the front of my sketchbook made it so much easier to keep track, because if you don't break it down like this, chances are you're not gonna finish, or you're gonna end up doing like 50 pages the night before. For portfolio submission specifically, on the right side I had my portfolio pieces tracker, so I had a list of all the mandatory things I needed for Sheridan, that is the drawing test, and then a list of all my personal pieces. I broke it down into weeks, so 8 weeks before it was due, I said I want to finish this week 1, this week 2, this week 3. And with my school schedule, the 3 days that I had completely off to just work on portfolios was Wednesday, Saturday, Sunday. So I also split it up into a little mini calendar with just Wednesday, Saturday, Sunday, because for the other days of the week I was using to keep up with schoolwork. So I could plan ahead. Saturday, week 2, I'm gonna finish my room drawing, for example. And then that way you can see how much time you have left, keep track of what you have done, and don't forget what you need to do. Another tip, if your sketchbook is being evaluated, if it's just for you, who cares? But don't be afraid to skip around a little bit and make sure you don't make it obvious. So, for example, if you are doing gesture drawings in your sketchbook and you've done 5 pages and you want to do 5 more pages, there's nothing wrong with just skipping ahead a little bit, changing what medium you're using, and keep going, because then it kind of looks like you're practicing more regularly as opposed to just this huge batch of like 10 pages of gestures in the middle of your sketchbook. This is dumb, but it's what I wanted to do. My recommendation would be to not make it obvious and not do it too much, because sketchbooks are not supposed to be perfect. But something I would do is, if while I'm going through my sketchbook at some point I'm like, this would be a good spot for some anatomy studies, I would kind of write in, do some foot studies on this page and then continue, so that when I was in the mood to do anatomy studies I could flip back, fill it back in, and yeah. And final tip, these stickies. They say that they are going to look through your entire sketchbook for when they're looking at your portfolio submission at Sheridan. They say that they're going to look through your whole sketchbook. Whether that is true or not, no one knows. So it was recommended to me, and therefore I'm recommending to you that if there's some spreads that you really want to make sure they look at, just because it really shows your sketching skills or shows your anatomy or your just a page that you really want to shows that you're experimenting with medium. If you practice painting on a page and you don't usually paint and you really want them to see it, put a sticky so that if they are going to skim through, they'll at least make sure they hit the pages that you stickied. As you can see from the title of this video, I have 22 ideas on things you can draw in your sketchbook. Not to toot my own horn, but I do think these things have a little more substance than maybe what to draw lists that you might Google might say, draw a flower or draw some shoes. Those are more random drawing prompts. These ideas, I think if you start incorporating into your sketchbook, not only is it great for portfolio submissions, but it's also going to help you develop as an artist and use your sketchbook more effectively. Without further ado, let's get to the flip through, and I'm going to tell you my ideas on top of that to keep it interesting. Idea number 1 is thumbnails or sketches for bigger projects you're planning. Make those thumbnails, plan out composition, test out colors, do all of that before you start your finished illustration. Don't be afraid to even write out your thoughts or plans in words. I wrote and annotated through my entire sketchbook. Sometimes I would even write down what lyric was playing while I drew something. Before you make your next piece, do some thumbnails, try it out, use your sketchbook for your sketches. Idea number 2 is to draw what's around you. Draw what you can see immediately in your surroundings. In this sketchbook, there are so many pages of me just drawing what I could see from my desk in classes I was bored in, usually English. Observational art is so huge and it's so helpful for you to improve as an artist. Things like a room, any room, your room, a classroom, your kitchen. You can draw the clutter on your desk or the view looking down at your feet. Maybe with the sketchbook in hands in view for a little bit of an inception situation. You could draw your family member cooking dinner or the view of rooftops in the neighborhood from your window. The trick is to not have these things just floating in the void of your page. How close is the door to the ceiling, and what angle does the wall meet the ceiling? How is my coffee cup casting a shadow on my desk? How is my mom holding the spoon? How tall is she compared to the stove? How do the cabinets behind her line up to her? Do this as much as you can and do not worry about perfection or technicalities. I usually did it in pen, and yes, some of them looked so wonky and messed up, but that's the point. Just try and translate what you're seeing in a 3D space onto the paper. And pay attention to angles, size of objects relative to each other, and the negative space, aka the space between the objects. Idea number 3 is gestures/life drawing. I lay out all my advice for gesture drawing in my portfolio advice video around this time, and if you're wondering what to focus on, that's where I'd start. If you don't have access to life drawing sessions, there are websites with models like artmodeltips.com, which I love to use as well. And there's not just one way to do gesture drawing. You could do quick 3 to 5 minute gestures using the whole page or an inch big. Or you could do longer studies, trying to get all the details and maybe trying to be realistic. You can go on Pinterest, search up outfits, and do quick studies of clothed figures. You can go on YouTube and find a dance or a sports video, pause every few seconds, and draw each pose. Life drawing does not have to be boring. Use markers, fine liners, pens, highlighters, whatever you want. Your sketchbook, your rules. Idea number 4 is comic/storyboards. Sequential art is not only fun, but it's also a great way to bring your characters or illustrations to life. It's a whole area of the art industry that not a lot of artists are trying at all. The boundaries of a comic panel or a storyboard box forces you to practice your composition skills, as opposed to just having floating illustrations on a page. Plus, learning how to place text boxes in an illustration takes practice. Quick one-page comics, either fan art or OCs, helps you practice your characterization and writing skills. And whether they're developed or just left as small thumbnails, it forces you to practice making readable poses and silhouettes. Plus, if you're interested in animation, storyboards are essentially keyframes, so practicing in your sketchbook is smart. Idea number 5, developed illustrations. Sometimes pulling out the good paper and starting cold turkey on an illustration can be like pulling teeth. If you're the kind of artist that likes making polished portraits or any other kind of illustration for that matter, don't be afraid to get into the habit of making them on a more consistent basis in your sketchbook. That way, when you have your $1 million idea and you want to break out the good paper, it'll be less pressure and you'll feel more comfortable. Here's some tips for making finished illustrations in your sketchbook. First tip, most sketchbooks work just fine for pencils, ink, markers. I was even doing gouache and acrylic painting in this sketchbook with little problem. This is not a mixed media sketchbook. Besides from a little bit of waving maybe if I mix too much water with my gouache, completely fine. Obviously, if you're doing a painting with lots of layers or lots of water like watercolor, you're going to need to use proper paper, but don't think you're limited to just what your paper says it can do on the box. Number 2, make sure there's nothing on the opposite page that will smudge when you close your book, and if you're using markers or something that's going to bleed, nothing on the back of the page that will be ruined. And tip number 3, plan out your composition with thumbnails or sketches so your illustration doesn't get cut off by the edges of the paper. And that pretty much covers all the concerns people have with developing illustrations in their sketchbook. I know so many people who are so against the idea of it, and for what? For why? And if you like how it turned out, as long as you planned out the composition of it, there's nothing stopping you from just scanning it like you would any other piece. Idea number 6 is lettering. I think this is something a lot of artists want to try and want to get better at, but they don't know how, or when, or where. And if you're trying to fill a sketchbook, there you go. Look up some lettering tutorials and fill a page or fill a spread, whatever you like. As artists, we already have a head start in terms of line quality and control over our lines to make them not shaky, so this is a skill that I think is pretty transferable, and if you're interested in it, why not? Idea number 7, design a product. If you want to think of this prompt in terms of those quirky, fun school assignments, like design a product that will solve a need in everyday life, yada yada, go right ahead. But what I actually mean is to design a product that you can actually develop. As artists, for the most part, we are looking to open different revenue streams, and one that is common for a reason is taking your art and printing it or turning it into products. Prints, postcards, stickers, charms, t-shirts, tote bags, enamel pins, whatever. When you design anything, it could entail needing initial concepts, thumbnails, sketches, color exploration, design variation. In this sketchbook, you can see me designing t-shirts and hoodies, so you see me placing design ideas I have on different parts. What would it look like if it was on the back of the hoodie versus the front? What would it look like if it was just in the corner? And if you're handing this sketchbook in for portfolios, teachers love seeing this kind of concept ideation and all the process work that goes into a final product. And at the end of it, you'll have plans for a product that you can actually develop and sell. Idea number 8 is a blind contour. Any kind of contour exercise is fun, easy, and helpful in developing your line sensitivity. I talk more about line quality in my portfolio video, but quickly, line sensitivity is paying attention to the details in your subject's contour. Every bump in clothing, every lock of hair, not generalizing shapes into smooth, curved lines, but instead slowing down and really paying attention to what you see and putting that on paper. If all of this is very new to you, I highly suggest looking up dedicated tutorials because this is literally so easy and fun to do. It looks cool and it helps you improve. Idea number 9 is character design and turnaround/ref sheets. Not only is this fun, it is also great practice for animation, comics, concept art, anything you're interested in getting into. Or if you have OCs of your own you want to develop solidified designs for or make reference sheets for, especially if you're starting a webtoon or some kind of project with them. Next week, I've got a video coming up all about character design, so look out for that if you want more advice. Idea number 10 is art challenges. Every couple weeks on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, there's a new art challenge going around. They're a great way of trying out new things, and if you're trying to grow your social media following, a great way of getting eyes to your work. This also includes Draw This in Your Style challenges, where you could potentially get featured by artists you admire, and you fill up a sketchbook page at the same time. Idea number 11 is fan art and redesigning characters. This is just pure fun, and it's great for social media as well. If you're handing this sketchbook to be evaluated, I'd be careful about how much of this you include, but if you're putting your own spin on characters, it's not obvious, or you're redesigning them altogether, you do you, boo. Number 12 is to experiment with medium. You can always paste in watercolor paper. And so what if your acrylic or gouache makes the paper weird on the other side? Just draw over it with some warm-up sketches. If your sketchbook is being evaluated, being experimental and visibly trying new things in the most low-risk environment possible is literally the best thing you could do. Not to mention if you're stuck in a box with pencils and ink, let's say, You can throw in some color and try to push your comfort zone. Paint the whole page yellow and freehand some fine liner on top of it if you're really stuck. Just go nuts. Speaking of warm-up sketches, idea number 13 is to just use a page for warm-up. If I'm really rusty, I like doing those hand-eye coordination exercises like spirals, straight lines, curved lines, and then S lines, or maybe just quick 30-second to 1-minute tiny little gestures. Not everything in your sketchbook has to be pretty, and especially if you've got a page that maybe something bled onto or something, perfect spot to do some quick warm-ups. Idea number 14 is to paste in other sketches on scrap paper or doodles. I pasted in some of my underdrawings or scrapped attempts on bond paper for my portfolio pieces in my sketchbook because where else am I going to put it? At least this way it's being put to good use. Also, if you're the kind of person who doodles on their notes or their line paper in school, might as well take those perfectly good sketches and put them into your sketchbook where A, finishes a page, and B, they can actually be kept and held onto and they won't be thrown out. Idea number 15 is kind of a more motivational one, but a sketchbook is the place to try things that you don't draw very often. This is individual for every single person, so it's hard to put a title onto what this tip is. Looking at my sketchbook, I don't draw very much architecture, so on some pages I purposefully tried to draw the interior of a room or a building in rough, mostly in my head 2-point perspective. Was it great? No, it wasn't even close to being good. I didn't take that much time in making it technically perfect. Just the act of practicing helped me so much when it came time to actually make a good architecture piece. You will know what you aren't great at and what you want to learn how to do, and you just have to shift your mindset from thinking that I can't do this and I hate drawing this because I suck at drawing this. You just gotta shift your mindset and just do it. If it helps you to go into it saying this is going to be bad and that's okay, then that's what you have to do. But at least then you're doing it. You can't get better at doing something without getting all the bad stuff out of the way first. That is, I think, the best way that you can use your sketchbook. Draw things that you know that you're not good at, that you want to get better at. Idea number 16 is a fun one. This is to study your favorite artists. I'm not talking just tracing or directly copying mindlessly. Really look at what makes their art style theirs. How do they draw their eyes? What kind of shadows do they put on their drawings? What kind of lines do they use, if any? Is it textured, thin, thick, clean, messy? How are their characters proportioned? Putting your finger down on what you like about their art might help you make changes to your own art style to better suit your tastes. Idea number 17 is to follow art tutorials on YouTube. I had no idea how to paint watercolor flowers, and I really wanted to, so I searched up a tutorial by Sheridan Campbell and I just followed along. There are so many videos on here for literally anything you would want to learn how to draw. It doesn't have to be all technical either. You can just draw fun little swooshy watercolor flowers like I did. Idea number 18 is to draw scenes from your life. I love doing this because it almost serves as a journal entry for that day or that moment. What were you doing? Not to mention romanticizing the everyday moments in your life the same way you would your OC or any of your favorite characters, I think is good for mental health in a strange way. It just makes you feel positive about your life, even if it's not that crazy or interesting. Not to mention, if it's funny or relatable, chances are it would do well on social media also. Idea number 19 is the Blob Exercise. I love this for when I'm art blocked or I just need to do something dumb and fun to get myself back into drawing. So you fill a page with blobs. I used Crayola markers, really doesn't matter. And then using a fine liner or a marker, draw something that takes the shape of it. And try your best not to go outside the blob. I draw anything from faces to full bodies to random objects. Don't worry about anatomy or being technical. Exaggeration is necessary and is the point of this exercise. Idea number 20 is a page of just simple little doodles. Just fill it with doodles. Absolutely jam-pack that thing with doodles. Random objects, fruit, plants, office supplies, makeup, food, clothing, letters, animals, clouds, stars, anything. You could use a random object generator or look up aesthetic mood boards and copy what you see there. Anything. It's not technical, it's just to get your hand moving and to churn out a bunch of ideas. It's also good for warm-up and just introducing some variety if a lot of your stuff is really technical. Idea number 21 is something I actually got from class. Movie still redraws. This is so good for practicing composition. Make sure you choose a movie with decent directing and cinematography, because basic shots like you see from sitcoms wouldn't work too well. Pause the movie, maybe in your favorite scene, and make quick thumbnails or longer sketches if you like, of whatever you see on the screen. The idea is to clearly break down the foreground, midground, and background. You can even use different colors if it helps. And as another step to just make it even more fun, pick your favorite movie and your favorite scene from the movie, pause every so often, and just fill a page with that. And finally, ideas to draw number 22 is anatomy studies. Now before you click off, this is something most artists hate or they see as a chore. They see it as something their teachers tell them to do. And to that I say, change your mindset. Learn to fall in love with the process of learning. That sounds so corny, but it's so important. Romanticize practice and study. That's the whole concept behind dark academia. Imagine this is your homework for your class at Hogwarts. I followed along with Proko's Anatomy for Artists series, and I dedicated a spread to each video, so each section of the body. And I just kept reminding myself that this is something I love and this is something I enjoy. And I wouldn't let myself psych myself out about it no matter how difficult it was. And I made it fun with adding color and adding stickers, because you can take my stickers for my sketchbook spreads over my dead body. You can do it. No stress, just practice. If it turns out awful, just glue the pages together. Those were 22 ideas from this art student to you on what you can put in your sketchbook. If you're looking for more advice on portfolios specifically or life drawing / technical drawing, I highly suggest you check out my portfolio advice video. If you haven't, it's linked here somewhere. And if you want more art advice and videos from me, don't forget to subscribe. And I will see you next week.